countless Americans have been told that even though they like their health plan, they can't keep their health plan. But hey, at least they're finally getting an apology from the president. Kind of, sort of. Take a look.
I am sorry that they are finding themselves in this situation based on assurances they got from me. We've got to work hard to make sure that they know we hear them.
That bite's getting a lot of play across the media, but what struck us about it here at The Lead, and granted we're a little solipsistic, was that it seemed awfully similar to President Obama taking advice from the governor of New Jersey, which the governor offered up to the president when I spoke to him on Tuesday. Take a listen.
Here's what my suggestion would be to him. Don't be so cute. And when you make a mistake, admit it. Now listen, if it was a mistake in 2009, if he was mistaken in 2009, 2010 on his understanding of how the law would operate, then just admit it to people.
For reaction, I want to bring in our panel. Editor of the Weekly Standard, Bill Kristol, president of the Center for American Progress, Neera Tanden, and CNN political commentator and Washington correspondent for The New Yorker, Ryan Lizza. So, Ryan, I'm not suggesting that the president watches The Lead.
Well, I was going to suggest that. Obviously, that's where he got the idea.
But
he may have read about it in the paper.
He did seem, well, there was some pickup for it. And then Christie, who was the man of the week, he probably had a better week than anybody else in American politics this week, did suggest, say you're sorry, admit it, and we got something like that from the president a couple days later.
Well, not only has he said he's sorry, but now he's taking the next step, and looks like there's going to be some policy change here, which could open a whole other can of worms, because you change one part of this law and it affects different parts. But look, he's been completely burned by this promise, and the White House is going to do something about it now, apparently.
You were in the Bush 41 White House when he violated the read my lips, no new taxes. I know you weren't in that office. You were down the hall. But how tough is it when a president realizes that something he said, some big promise he made, that he wasn't going to be able to keep up? How difficult is it to come to terms with that fact?
Well, it's difficult, especially in this case. The president has spent 3 years since the bill was passed pretending something was the case that wasn't the case. I think broken promises hurt you, though, particularly when the policy doesn't work. That is, I think voters will forgive a politician who misleads them, perhaps, but things turn out okay. And they will forgive a politician who tells the truth and things don't turn out well, but it was a good faith effort. When you both don't tell the truth and the thing is a fiasco, you have serious political problems. But incidentally, I was glad that President Obama took the advice of a Republican governor, one of the most successful Republicans in the country. Should take the advice of Republicans more often. And if they have to transmit it, and they have to transmit it through you on The Lead, you're playing a very useful role here. Ted Cruz would like to come on Monday. He's got a couple of other things that the president could learn.
I'm sure he does.
I'm sure, and maybe Ted
Cruz
could apologize for the government shutdown. That would be great. We'd have both on both ends.
I'm happy to be the conduit for any message.
I would recommend he do that. Take Bill Kristol's advice, come on TV and apologize.
What fix are we talking about possibly? Ryan was talking about, is it an administrative fix maybe, or is it more subsidies for people so that it can afford?
Look, I mean, I think they're looking at a series of options. I know Senator Landrieu has legislation to extend the grandfather clause itself, which would allow people who had coverage to continue their coverage for those people in the individual market. So there's talk of subsidies and other things. I think, look, it's important for the president to be a reality-based president. If he, in this situation, people are angry about it, he should be honest about it. I'm glad he said something, but I think it's really important to see what's going to happen here. And I think that the challenge also is, the real measure of this will be if the website works and people are signing up, and a lot of people benefit from the law, then I think a lot of these things will be forgiven in the long run. If they're not, if it doesn't work, that's going to be a big challenge, and it's going to be a substantive challenge.
But the thing is, a lot of us who have been following health care for a long time, both in the 80s and the 90s, and also this law, knew that that promise was not going to be able to be kept as the president made it. And in fact, in 2010, you might remember President Obama had that big health care summit across the street from the White House at Blair House. All the Republicans came, Democrats came. And here's an interesting exchange from 2010.
Between 8 million and 9 million people may very well lose the coverage that they have because of this, because of the construct of this bill. That's our concern.
The 8 to 9 million people that you refer to that might have to change their coverage, keep in mind out of the 300 million Americans that we're talking about, would be folks who the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, estimates would find the deal in the exchange better, would be a better deal.
That's what we're now talking about. Those 8 or 9 million Americans who, now the question is whether or not the deal is better. The question is whether they can afford the deal with the subsidies that some of them are eligible for, and also whether they can get on the website to see the deal. But this is not a real secret. So when President Obama, came to the realization this week that, it wasn't true, he knew it wasn't true back then.
And also with their choice of doctors and plans, people were limited. But I think both of you actually have indicated something that's important, which is that the apology last night was fine. The apology itself isn't important. But he is indicating, I think, that he's going to go for a fix in December. They'll try to get the website up on November 30th. They'll claim it's working fine, even if it's working, semi-fine or at all. And then I think the dynamic of this debate will change in a pretty radical way. What was the dynamic a month or 6 weeks ago? People like me were saying, can't we delay parts of this thing for a year? No, absolutely not. This is the law of the land, Bill. Get used to it, man. It was passed by Congress,
That's what Neera said.
ratified by the Supreme Court.
He also said the shutdown was fine if we were going to hold people accountable.
I'm saying the voters ratified it. That was not a bad talking point, incidentally. Because
Yeah.
if you're defending something, it's not bad to be able to say, hey, come on, get over it. Once he acknowledges there have to be fixes, whether it's more subsidies or whatever he wants, then we're in a genuine legislative debate. I think it's a very fluid moment. I don't think it's necessarily, incidentally, I think it's wise of the president to go in this direction, because I don't think he can stick to the talking point of 6 weeks ago anymore, which is, you're a critic of the plan, be quiet.
Well, look,
but I
both
think it becomes
sides
a very fluid moment
But aren't
now,
both
where
sides,
are at risk.
both sides are now in the realm of reality, whereas before the Republican position was we have to defund the whole thing and we're going to shut down the
Right,
government
which
to do
is
it.
never going to
Right.
happen.
And the administration was absolutely
Ended
no
up being
fixes. We're not
delay
changing
it for
one
one year.
detail.
It would have been terrible to delay the mandate.
At least
We
now,
only have a couple minutes
no, I'm
left.
just saying that
Where
at least
do we
now
end
you're in
up?
the
Where
realm.
do we end up now?
At least now you're in the realm
I agree with
of
that.
two sides looking at legitimate fixes for a
Right.
flawed law, and that's probably a better place.
And the truth-
I don't think, but Bill, I think if you think that that's going to lead to getting rid of the entire thing altogether.
That'll take
It seems
a couple
like-
of years. That'll take a couple of years. I think you could have much bigger modifications in the law 2, 3, 4 months from now than anyone thought possible a month from now.
What do you
Now,
see
here's-
this go? Where do you see this go?
actually, look, I think the big issue really is the healthcare website. And I think actually Democrats have been arguing for small fixes here and there throughout this process. The problem has always been Republicans have not even done small fixes. They've said, we're going to take the whole bill down. That has been the strategy of House Republicans from the get-go. If they come to the table and say, let's deal with the grandfather clause, I think there will be an actual, or making sure people can keep their health insurance, I think there will be an actual negotiation around that. And that's fine. I don't think the position should be there's no fixes to any law.
But I think
ever.
Bill's point is that if all of a sudden you're changing what the requirements are for health care plans, which is what Eric Cantor was talking about in that bill, as to why people would lose
The
their
issue-
care,
right. If you
then
say-
other
if
things might enter
taking
the
us-
conversation.
Taking something like the individual mandate, for example, there's 150,000 people who've signed up for healthcare now who get those premiums from the mandate. So switching something like that would raise people's premiums on the other side, too.
All right, great.